The stars stretched endlessly across the view screen as Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge. It was the year 2247, and humanity had finally made its mark among the cosmos. 12 star systems now hosted human colonies, each one a testament to the species' determination to reach beyond their home world. Jake had spent 15 years in space, and the wonder of it still hadn't faded. "Captain, we're approaching the Kepler 2247 system," said Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her station. She was young, barely 30, but her expertise in archaeology had proven invaluable on their mission. Her red hair was tied back in a tight bun, and her green eyes focused intently on her screens. Jake nodded. "Take us in slowly. Full sensor sweep of all planets." The horizon's edge moved gracefully through space, its engines humming quietly. The ship wasn't the largest in Earth's fleet, but it was built for exploration. Its crew of 45 scientists and military personnel had been traveling for 3 months, charting new systems and looking for signs of habitable worlds or ancient civilizations. Dr. Paul Chen, the ship's linguist, joined them on the bridge. He was a thin man with graying hair and glasses that he constantly adjusted. "Any signs of life?" he asked hopefully. "Nothing yet," replied Lieutenant Kevin Murphy from Tactical. "Wait, I'm getting something. Energy readings from the 4th planet. They're faint but definitely artificial." Jake felt his pulse quicken. Finding traces of alien civilizations was rare, even after decades of space travel. Most of what humanity had encountered were ruins, remnants of species long dead. "Can you identify the source?" "It appears to be coming from a structure on the surface. A big one, Captain. I've never seen readings like this before." Amy was already pulling up data on her screen. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls. "Captain, these energy signatures don't match anything in our database. The structure could be millions of years old, maybe older." "Prepare a landing team," Jake ordered. "Amy, Paul, you're with me." "Kevin, you have the bridge. Keep the ship in high orbit and monitor our position." Within an hour, the landing shuttle descended through the planet's thin atmosphere. The world below was barren, covered in rust-colored sand and jagged rock formations. No plants grew here, no water flowed. It was a dead world, frozen in time. But the structure that rose before them was anything but dead. It towered hundreds of feet into the dusty sky, made of a black material that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with blue light. The architecture was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. All sharp angles and impossible curves that hurt the eyes to follow. "This is incredible," Amy whispered as they approached. She held a scanner in her hands, recording everything. The materials, the design, it's all completely foreign. This wasn't built by any species we know. Paul was already examining the symbols near what appeared to be an entrance. "Some of these markings are similar to ruins we found on Proxima 7, but those were only 50,000 years old. This is far more advanced." The entrance opened as they approached, sliding silently into the walls. Jake's hand moved to his weapon, but nothing emerged. The passage beyond was dark, lit only by those same glowing symbols. They entered carefully, their boots echoing in the vast chamber beyond. The room was circular, with a domed ceiling that rose at least 100 feet above them. In the center stood a massive crystal structure, easily 20 feet tall. It pulsed with inner light, casting dancing shadows across the walls. "What is it?" Jake asked. "Some kind of storage device, I think," Amy said, moving closer. "It's beautiful." "Amy, wait," Paul called out, but she had already reached out to touch the crystal's surface. The moment her fingers made contact, the room exploded with light. Holographic images filled the air around them, spinning and shifting. Star maps appeared, showing the galaxy in stunning detail. Alien figures moved through recorded scenes, tall and graceful beings with silver skin and eyes that glowed like stars. Then came the text. Thousands of symbols scrolling through the air, accompanied by a deep humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Paul, can you read any of this?" Jake asked, shielding his eyes from the bright light. Paul was frantically working on his portable computer, pointing it at the symbols. "Give me a minute." "The computer is analyzing the patterns." Yes, I recognize some of these base structures. It's related to the language from Proxima 7, but much older, more complex." The images continued to shift. They saw worlds being born and dying. They saw civilizations rising and falling. They saw wars that consumed entire star systems. And then they saw Earth. The small blue planet appeared in the center of the display, rotating slowly. A line of text appeared beneath it in symbols that gradually transformed into English as Paul's computer worked its translation algorithms. From the third world of a yellow star, "They will come," Paul read aloud, his voice shaking. "The ones who refuse to bow. The ones who remake what is broken. The ones who will not stop." More text appeared and Paul continued reading. "We are the architects. We who shaped the galaxy for 3 million years. We who guided the young races. We who believed we understood the patterns of fate. We leave this warning for those who will come after. When the humans reach the stars, the galaxy will face its greatest test." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Humans, this prophecy is about us?" "There's more," Paul said, his face pale. "They do not know defeat. They do not accept limits. When cornered, they become more dangerous. When peaceful, they dream of impossible things. They will inspire the galaxy or burn it to ash. They are the chaos that breaks all order. They are the variable that cannot be predicted. The galaxy must be ready. The galaxy must be warned. The humans are coming." The holographic display suddenly shifted to show images of war. Human ships fighting against alien fleets. Cities burning on dozens of worlds. Planets cracking apart under devastating weapons. It was a vision of apocalypse, and humanity was at the center of it all. Amy stumbled backward, her hand leaving the crystal. The moment contact was broken, the images vanished. The room returned to its previous state, quiet and dark except for the glowing symbols on the walls. "What have we found?" she whispered. Jake's mind was racing. This changed everything. An ancient civilization, millions of years dead, had somehow predicted humanity's rise. They had seen humans as a threat, something to be feared and warned against. If this information got out, if the other alien species learned about this prophecy, it could destroy everything humanity had worked for. "We need to report this to Earth Command immediately," Jake said. "Paul, copy everything you can from that database. Amy, document every detail of this structure. We're going to need proof of all of this." "Captain, do you understand what this means?" Paul asked. "This prophecy makes us sound like monsters, like we're destined to destroy the galaxy." "I understand perfectly," Jake replied. "That's why we need to handle this carefully. The galaxy's peace depends on it." As they worked to gather data, none of them noticed the small pulse of energy that left the crystal and shot up through the planet's atmosphere. A signal, sent to ancient relay stations scattered across the galaxy. A warning transmitted after millions of years of silence. The prophecy had been found. The countdown had begun, and across the galaxy ancient systems began to wake from their long sleep, preparing for the arrival of the species they had been designed to stop. Humanity's greatest challenge was about to begin, and they didn't even know it yet. The message from the horizon's edge reached Earth Command within hours, traveling through the quantum communication network that connected all human colonies. Within a day, every government on Earth knew about the ancient prophecy. Within 2 days, so did the rest of the galaxy. Lisa Grant stood before the massive window of her apartment in New York, watching the city below. She was 45 years old, with dark hair just beginning to show streaks of gray, and she had served as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 5 years. Her job had always been difficult, but now it felt impossible. Her phone rang. It was President Daniel Hayes calling from Washington. "Lisa, I need you on Concordia Prime immediately," he said without greeting. "The Council has called an emergency session. They want answers about this prophecy." "I saw the preliminary report," Lisa replied. "Mr. President, this could destroy 20 years of diplomatic work. The other species already view us with suspicion. This prophecy will confirm their worst fears." "I know. That's why I need my best diplomat there. Make them understand that we're not the threat this ancient civilization predicted. Make them see that we've changed, that we're peaceful." Lisa wanted to laugh. Peaceful. Humanity had fought wars for thousands of years. Even now, with colonies spread across 12 systems, there were conflicts. Pirates raiding trade routes. Corporate disputes turning violent. The colony wars of 2231 were still fresh in everyone's memory. How could she convince ancient alien species that humans were peaceful, when their own history proved otherwise? "I'll do my best," she said. "That's all I ask. But Lisa, be careful. Some of these species have been watching us closely. If they decide we're too dangerous, they might act first and ask questions later." The call ended and Lisa began packing. Within hours, she was aboard a fast courier ship heading for Concordia Prime, the massive space station that served as the Galactic Council's headquarters. The station orbited a neutron star, its shields protecting it from the deadly radiation. It was neutral ground, where 47 different alien species gathered to discuss matters affecting the entire galaxy. When Lisa arrived, she could feel the tension immediately. The corridors were crowded with alien diplomats, all talking in hushed tones. Some looked at her with fear, others with barely concealed hostility. A few, thankfully, seemed concerned rather than angry. The council chamber was enormous, a circular room with seats arranged in rising tiers. Each species had its own section, decorated according to their culture. The Quillari, tall beings with smooth gray skin and large black eyes, sat in meditation pods that floated above the floor. The Draxan collective, insectoid creatures with hard exoskeletons, clustered in their hive seats. The Lumarians, peaceful beings that glowed with soft internal light, occupied cushioned platforms. Lisa took her place at the human delegation's seat. She was alone. Earth had other diplomats at the station, but for this session she would speak for all humanity. The council leader, a Quillari named Theron, rose to speak. His voice echoed through the chamber, amplified by the station's systems. We gathered to discuss a matter of grave importance. An ancient prophecy has been discovered, one that speaks of humanity in terms we cannot ignore. Theron activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. The symbols from the Architect Temple appeared along with Paul Chen's translation. The words hung in the air for all to see. The architects were the first civilization to achieve interstellar travel, Theron continued. They guided many of us in our early development. Their wisdom was unmatched. If they saw humans as a threat, we must take that warning seriously. A Draxan representative stood, its mandibles clicking. More than a warning. This is a prophecy of destruction. The images show human ships attacking our worlds. The text describes them as chaos incarnate. We must act now before they become too powerful to stop. That's not fair, Lisa said, standing. This prophecy was written millions of years ago, before humans even existed. You're judging us based on the fears of a dead civilization. Are their fears unfounded? Asked another delegate, this one from the Korthan Empire. Humans have been in space for less than a century, yet you've already fought wars among yourselves. You've strip-mined planets, destroyed ecosystems, and your history on Earth is filled with violence. Lisa felt her anger rising but forced herself to stay calm. Yes, we have a violent history. We don't deny that. But we've also learned from our mistakes. We've created laws, established peace, and reached out to other species with open hands. Judge us by our actions, not by an ancient prophecy. Theron raised a hand for silence. The Council has reviewed humanity's record. You have indeed been peaceful in your interactions with other species. But the prophecy speaks of what you will become, not what you are now. The architects saw patterns in your species, tendencies that could lead to galactic catastrophe. Then help us avoid that future, Lisa pleaded. Work with us, guide us. Isn't that better than condemning us based on a prediction? A Lumarian named Vrel spoke up. His voice was gentle like wind chimes. Ambassador Grant speaks wisely. The prophecy could be interpreted in many ways. Perhaps it is a warning not about humans themselves, but about how we respond to them. Fear often creates the very outcomes we seek to avoid. Beautiful philosophy, the Draxan clicked sarcastically. But philosophy won't protect our worlds when human warships arrive. The debate continued for hours. Some species supported humanity, arguing that the prophecy was too vague to justify action. Others demanded immediate restrictions on human expansion. The Draxans and several other militant species called for something even more extreme, a complete military quarantine of human space. Lisa fought for every inch, using every diplomatic skill she possessed. She showed evidence of human cooperation with other species. She quoted from human philosophy and literature, demonstrating humanity's capacity for growth and change. She appealed to logic, to compassion, to self-interest. Anything that might sway votes, but she could see she was losing. Fear was a powerful motivator, and the prophecy had planted seeds of terror in minds across the galaxy. Finally, after 3 days of debate, Theron called for a vote on the proposed resolution. The terms were harsh. Humanity would have 6 months to dismantle its military forces. All colonies beyond the Sol system would be abandoned. Human ships would be limited in range and capability. Most importantly, humanity would submit to Council oversight, allowing alien inspectors to monitor Earth and ensure compliance. It was surrender in everything but name. The vote began. Species after species cast their decision, displayed on the holographic board. Lisa watched the numbers change, her heart sinking with each vote in favor of the resolution. The Lumerians voted against it. So did a handful of other species, but it wasn't enough. The final tally appeared. 31 in favor, 16 against. The resolution passed. Humanity has 6 months to comply, Theron announced. Failure to do so will be considered an act of aggression against the Galactic Council. This session is adjourned. Lisa stood in the chamber long after the other delegates had left. 6 months. 6 months to convince Earth to give up everything they had worked for, or face war against 47 alien species. It was an impossible choice. She sent an encrypted message to President Hayes, summarizing the vote. His response came quickly. It was only 3 words, but they told her everything she needed to know. We refuse compliance. Back on the horizon's edge, Jake Morrison and his team continued studying the Architect Temple. Amy had been working almost non-stop, cataloging every symbol and artifact. Paul had managed to access deeper levels of the crystal database, finding more information about the architects themselves. Captain, you need to see this. Paul called from his workstation. Jake joined him, looking at the screen. I found something interesting in the deeper files. The architects didn't just make prophecies. They created failsafes, weapons hidden throughout the galaxy, designed to activate under certain conditions. What kind of weapons? I'm not entirely sure yet. The database is encrypted in layers, but from what I can translate, they're ancient defense systems, powerful enough to sterilize entire worlds. And Jake, I think they're designed to target any species that becomes too aggressive or expansionist. Jake felt cold. Are you saying these weapons could be pointed at us? I'm saying they might already be activating. When Amy touched that crystal, she might have triggered something. A signal, a warning, a countdown. We need to figure out what we've started before it's too late. Amy joined them, her face tired but excited. I've been analyzing the images from the prophecy. Everyone's focused on the war scenes, but there's more. Other images showing humans and aliens working together. Images of humans helping to rebuild worlds, sharing technology, exploring together. The prophecy isn't just about destruction. It's about choice. What do you mean? Jake asked. I think the architects were showing possibilities, not certainties. They saw that humans could inspire the galaxy or destroy it. The outcome depends on how everyone reacts. If the galaxy treats us as enemies, we become enemies. If they treat us as partners, we become partners. Jake looked at both of them. We need to get this information to Ambassador Grant. If the Council is making decisions based on fear, they're guaranteeing the very future the architects warned about. Admiral Kyle Stevens stood in the war room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, staring at the holographic display of human space. He was 58 years old, gray-haired and weathered from decades of military service. He had fought in the colony wars, commanded ships in the pirate conflicts, and thought he had seen everything war could offer. He was wrong. The display showed Earth's defensive positions in red. The approaching Council fleet showed in blue, and there was a lot of blue. Ships from 30 different species, all converging on human space. Intelligence estimated over 3,000 vessels, ranging from small patrol craft to massive dreadnoughts that could level entire cities from orbit. Earth's defense forces numbered 800 ships. Better trained, perhaps. More maneuverable, definitely, but hopelessly outnumbered. Options? He asked his staff. Commander Betty Hall, his tactical officer, pulled up a series of projections. If they hit us all at once, we can hold the outer colonies for maybe 2 weeks. The inner systems, including Earth, perhaps a month. After that, it's just a matter of how much damage we want to inflict before we lose. Unacceptable, Kyle said. Give me something better. Sir, there is no better. We can't win a conventional war against those numbers. Our only hope is that they're not unified. 30 species means 30 different command structures, 30 different sets of objectives. If we can exploit that, maybe cause enough casualties to make some of them reconsider, we might negotiate a settlement. Kyle shook his head. President Hayes was clear. No surrender. We won't give up our freedom because of an ancient prophecy. Another officer, Lieutenant Sam Rogers, spoke up. What about Operation Cornerstone? We could threaten the architect installations. If those ancient weapons activate, they won't just target us. The Council worlds would be at risk too. That's mutual destruction, Betty said. We'd be gambling with billions of lives. We're already gambling with billions of lives, Kyle replied. If the Council invades, how many humans die? How many aliens? At least with Cornerstone, we have a deterrent. He activated a classified file, showing the locations of 17 architect installations that Amy's team had identified from the temple database. Each one was on or near a major council world. Each one contained weapons powerful enough to crack a planet's crust. We spread the word quietly. Let the council know that if they attack us, we'll trigger these installations. Nobody wins, but we all lose together. It might make them think twice. The room fell silent. It was a desperate plan, barely better than the alternative. But Kyle had learned long ago that sometimes desperate plans were all you had. On Earth, the public reaction to the council's ultimatum was explosive. Protests filled the streets of every major city. Some people demanded that the government comply, arguing that survival was more important than pride. Others called for war, insisting that humanity would never bow to alien threats. President Hayes addressed the planet from the White House. His face was drawn and tired as he spoke to cameras broadcasting to billions of people. My fellow humans, we face a crisis unlike any in our history. The Galactic Council has demanded we surrender our freedom, our colonies, and our future. They ask this not because we have done wrong, but because they fear what we might become. I stand before you today to say that we will not comply. The speech continued, laying out Earth's position. Humanity would defend itself. The colonies would be reinforced, not abandoned. The military would expand, not dismantle. If the Council wanted war, they would have it. But Hayes also extended an offer. We do not want conflict. We ask the Council to reconsider, to judge us by our actions rather than ancient fears. We offer cooperation, cultural exchange, and peaceful coexistence. But we will not surrender our right to exist freely in the galaxy we call home. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. Reactions were mixed. Some species saw it as defiance. Others saw it as a reasonable response to unreasonable demands. The Lumerians publicly supported humanity, calling the Council's ultimatum unjust. Several smaller species followed their lead, creating the first cracks in the Council's unity. On Concordia Prime, Lisa Grant worked tirelessly to exploit those cracks. She met privately with delegates who had voted against the resolution, building a coalition of sympathetic species. Ambassador Vrel became her closest ally, using his influence among the older species to argue for patience. The prophecy speaks of choice, Vrel told a gathering of moderate delegates. If we attack humanity out of fear, we become the aggressors. We create the very future we claim to prevent. Is that not exactly what the architects warned against? But the hardliners weren't listening. The Draxon Collective began mobilizing their fleet, positioning ships along human territory. Other militant species did the same. The Council had voted for a 6-month deadline, but it was clear some species weren't willing to wait. The incident at New Haven changed everything. New Haven was a farming colony on the edge of human space, home to 2,000 settlers. They grew crops using advanced hydroponics, creating food for the inner colonies. It was peaceful, isolated, and completely defenseless. When 3 Draxon warships entered the system without warning, the colonists sent out a distress call. But help was hours away and the Draxons weren't waiting. Their commander, claiming authority under the Council's resolution, demanded immediate evacuation. The colonists refused. They had done nothing wrong. They wouldn't abandon their homes based on threats. The Draxons opened fire. The colony's shields held for 10 minutes. Then they failed and the orbital bombardment began. Agricultural domes shattered. Residential buildings collapsed. Within an hour, New Haven was burning. The human defense frigate Valiant arrived too late to stop the bombardment, but in time to engage the Draxon ships. The battle was brief and brutal. The Valiant destroyed 2 of the Draxon warships and damaged the 3rd badly enough to force its retreat. But the damage was done. Of the 2,000 colonists at New Haven, only 300 survived. The images from New Haven spread across the galaxy within hours. Burned buildings, crying children, bodies being pulled from rubble. The Draxons claimed they were acting in self-defense, preventing a future threat. But the images told a different story. This was a massacre. Public opinion shifted dramatically. Many species that had supported the Council's hard line began to question the wisdom of preemptive violence. The Lumerians called for an emergency investigation. Even some of the moderate Quillari expressed concern about the Draxons' actions. But Earth's reaction was unified and furious. President Hayes declared a state of war with the Draxan Collective. Human ships began hunting Draxan vessels throughout the border regions. Within a week, 12 more Draxan ships had been destroyed in retaliatory strikes. The galaxy teetered on the edge of total war. Kyle mobilized everything Earth had. Reserves were called up. Factories converted to military production. New ships rolled out of orbital shipyards at record pace. Every human colony began building defenses, preparing for siege. And quietly, Kyle positioned Special Forces teams near each of the 17 Architect installations. They had one job. If the Council fleet attacked Earth, they would activate the ancient weapons. The galaxy would burn together. Jake Morrison received urgent orders to return to Earth with all data from the Architect Temple. But before the Horizon's Edge could leave orbit, Paul made a breakthrough in translating the deeper database files. Jake, the fail-safe weapons. I understand them now, Paul said, his face pale. They're not designed to target humans. They target whoever acts like the Architects did, whoever tries to suppress another species through force. Don't you see? If the Council attacks us, the weapons will activate against them, not us. The prophecy was a test. The Architects wanted to see if future civilizations would repeat their mistakes. Amy was reading over his shoulder. That's why the images showed both outcomes. Cooperation or destruction. The galaxy has to choose, and if they choose violence, the Architects' weapons will make them pay for it. We need to tell the Council, Jake said. If they understand this, maybe they'll stop the mobilization. Will they believe us? Paul asked. Or will they think we're lying to save ourselves? It was a good question. Trust was in short supply, and the New Haven massacre had made it even scarcer. But Jake had to try. He sent the data to both Earth Command and to Lisa Grant, along with a detailed explanation of what they had discovered. The message reached Concordia Prime during another emergency council session. Theron was attempting to restore order as species argued about the New Haven incident and the widening conflict. Lisa requested permission to speak. When granted, she displayed Paul's findings on the central hologram. The Architects didn't leave a prophecy about humanity, she said. They left a test for all of us. A test about how we respond to fear. Do we choose understanding or violence? Do we work together or tear each other apart? The ancient weapons exist and they will activate, but not against humans. Against anyone who chooses the path of suppression and control. She paused, letting that sink in. New Haven was a tragedy. 2,000 innocent people attacked because of fear, not evidence. If we continue down this path, if the Council fleet attacks human worlds, the Architects' weapons will judge us all, and none of us will survive that judgment. The chamber erupted in argument. The energy readings from the Architect installations created panic across the galaxy. Species that had never agreed on anything suddenly found themselves united in terror. The ancient weapons were real. They were activating, and nobody knew how to stop them. Jake Morrison received emergency authorization to investigate. The Horizon's Edge was the only ship that had successfully interfaced with Architect technology. If anyone could figure out how to shut down the weapons, it was his crew. But Paul had found something else in the database, coordinates to a location deeper in uncharted space. The file was marked with symbols that translated roughly as origin point or perhaps heart. Whatever was there, the Architects had considered it important enough to hide far from any inhabited systems. Captain, I think this is where the Architects stored their central intelligence, Paul explained. If there's a way to control or stop the weapons, it would be there. Jake made the decision quickly. Set course. Maximum speed. Amy joined them on the bridge as the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel. Do you think we're doing the right thing? What if we're wrong about the weapons? What if they are designed to target humans? Then we're heading into a trap, Jake said honestly. But we don't have a choice. If those weapons activate fully, the death toll will be in the billions. We have to at least try to stop it. The journey took 3 days, pushing the Horizon's Edge to its limits. When they finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel, what they saw took their breath away. The planet was massive, easily twice the size of Earth. But it wasn't a natural world. The entire surface was covered in structures, millions of buildings and machines that stretched across continents. It was a constructed world built by the Architects at the height of their power. I'm not detecting any defense systems, reported Kevin Murphy, but the energy readings from the surface are off the scale. Whatever's down there, it's been running for millions of years. They landed near what appeared to be the largest structure, a pyramid that rose miles into the thin atmosphere. The surface was covered in the same glowing symbols they had seen at the temple, but these pulsed with urgency, like a heartbeat. The entrance opened automatically as they approached. Inside, the corridors were vast and empty, designed for beings much larger than humans. Their footsteps echoed as they walked deeper into the structure. Finally, they reached a central chamber. It was circular like the temple, but vastly larger, and floating in the center was something impossible. A sphere of light pulsing and shifting, containing what looked like entire galaxies within its depths. As they entered, a voice spoke. It came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking in perfect English. Welcome, young ones. I am the caretaker. I have waited 3 million years for someone to find this place. Jake stepped forward cautiously. Are you an architect? I am what remains of them. When they understood the truth of their mistakes, they created me, a guardian of their wisdom and their warnings, an intelligence designed to guide without controlling, to teach without commanding. The sphere pulsed and holographic images appeared around them. They saw the architects as they had been, tall and graceful, spreading across the galaxy with noble intentions. They helped younger species develop technology, offered guidance, shared resources. For millions of years, they were the galaxy's caretakers. Then came the rebellion. A young species, aggressive and violent, refused the architects' guidance. They wanted to chart their own path, make their own mistakes, grow in their own way. The architects, convinced they knew better, tried to suppress them. The war that followed devastated entire sectors. The rebellious species fought with desperate fury. The architects fought with overwhelming force. In the end, the architects won. The young species was reduced to a handful of survivors, scattered and broken, but the victory was hollow. The architects realized they had become what they most feared, tyrants who destroyed rather than guided. Their certainty had led to genocide. Their need for control had created the very chaos they sought to prevent. They understood too late, the caretaker continued. They had repeated the oldest mistake. They had let fear override wisdom. In their shame, they created me and the weapons system. Not to destroy future threats, but to prevent future tyrants. Amy spoke up. The weapons don't target humans. They target whoever tries to suppress another species. Correct. The weapons activate when any civilization attempts to control another through force, rather than cooperation. They measure aggression, suppression, the use of violence to enforce will. When those thresholds are crossed, the weapons respond. It is harsh justice, but the architects believed it necessary to prevent their mistake from being repeated. The Council is about to cross those thresholds, Jake said. Their fleet is mobilizing to attack human space. Will the weapons destroy them? If they attack, yes. The threshold will be crossed. Multiple species united to suppress one through military force. The weapons will sterilize every world involved in the attack. Billions will die. It is the price the architects set for tyranny. Paul was frantically typing on his computer. There has to be a way to stop this. To shut down the weapons. There is, the caretaker said. The weapons can be deactivated, but only through an act of trust so profound that it proves the galaxy has learned the architect's lesson. What kind of act? Jake asked. The sphere pulsed brighter. The threatened species must stand down completely. Remove all defenses. Open their worlds to their enemies. Trust that the galaxy will choose peace over violence. If they do this, and if the galaxy responds with cooperation rather than conquest, the weapons will recognize that wisdom has replaced fear. They will deactivate permanently. Jake felt his blood run cold. You're asking humanity to make itself completely defenseless, to trust species that have already attacked us, that have called for our destruction. That's insane. It is trust, the caretaker replied. The architect's mistake was trusting no one but themselves. They believed only they could be wise, only they could be trusted with power. They were wrong. True wisdom is knowing when to trust others, even at great risk. Especially at great risk, Amy was shaking her head. Earth will never agree to this. Not after New Haven. Not with a council fleet approaching our borders. You're asking us to commit suicide. I am asking you to choose what humanity will become. The prophecy spoke of humans as chaos, as the variable that breaks all patterns. You can be the chaos that destroys, or the chaos that transforms. You can prove fear right, or you can prove trust right, but you cannot do both. Jake stood silent, his mind racing. The caretaker was asking for the impossible. Humanity had fought for centuries to reach the stars, to build colonies to create a future among the cosmos. Now they were supposed to just give it all up on faith? Trust that species who had voted to destroy them would suddenly change their minds? But he also understood the alternative. If the weapons activated, billions would die, human and alien. The galaxy would burn, and humanity would be blamed for it. The prophecy would become self-fulfilling in the worst possible way. What if we refuse? He asked quietly. What if humanity chooses to fight instead? Then the weapons will activate when the threshold is crossed. The council worlds will burn. Human worlds will survive the weapons, but not the revenge that follows. The galaxy will unite against humanity, not out of fear, but out of justified rage. Your species will be hunted to extinction. The prophecy will end in blood, as the architects foresaw it might. The caretaker's fear dimmed slightly. I do not judge you, young captain. The choice is impossibly difficult. The architects designed it that way. Only a species truly committed to peace would accept such vulnerability. Only a galaxy truly evolved beyond violence would reward such trust. It is a test with no middle ground. Paul looked at Jake. We need to report this to Earth. Let President Hayes and Admiral Stevens decide. What would you do? Jake asked the caretaker. If you were human facing this choice? I am not human. But if I were, I would remember what makes your species unique. You do not accept limitations. You do not surrender to fate. When faced with impossible choices, you find impossible solutions. Perhaps that is why the architects feared you, not because you are violent, but because you are unpredictable, because you might actually choose trust when all logic says to choose violence. Jake made a decision. We're going back. Earth needs to know everything. The weapons, the choice, all of it. But I'm going to recommend something crazy, something no military leader would ever approve. What? Amy asked, total stand down. We open every human world to council inspection. We power down every weapon. We prove to the galaxy that we're not the threat the prophecy described, and we dare them to prove they're better than the architects were. Kevin was staring at him. Sir, that's suicide. If the council doesn't change their minds, we're defenseless. I know, but if the caretaker is right, if we fight, we die anyway. At least this way we die having tried for something better. We die having chosen trust over fear, and maybe, just maybe, that choice changes the galaxy. The caretaker's fear pulsed with what might have been approval, spoken like a member of the species the architects both feared and hoped for. Return to your people, Captain Morrison. Tell them what you have learned. The countdown continues. The message from Jake Morrison created an immediate crisis. President Hayes called an emergency meeting of his cabinet, military leadership, and senior advisors. The room in the White House Situation Room was packed with people, all arguing at once. Admiral Kyle Stevens was furious. This is insane. Captain Morrison is asking us to commit national suicide, based on the word of an alien artificial intelligence. We'd be defenseless against a fleet that's already proven it will attack us without provocation. But if we don't stand down, the weapons activate, said Secretary of State Rachel Turner. Billions of people die, including humans. The council will blame us for it and will face extinction anyway. We don't know if this caretaker is telling the truth, Kyle argued. It could be a trick. Get us to lower our defenses. Then the council sweeps in and takes everything. President Hayes sat quietly, listening to the arguments flow back and forth. He was thinking about New Haven, about the children who had died there, about the choice between bad options and worse options. Finally, he raised his hand for silence. Kyle, what's your honest assessment? If we fight, can we win? The Admiral's jaw tightened. No, sir. Best case, we inflict heavy casualties and force a negotiated settlement. Worst case, we lose everything within 6 months. Those are the only two outcomes. And if we stand down, then we're trusting species that have already attacked us to suddenly develop a conscience. It's a gamble, sir. A terrible gamble, Hayes nodded slowly. Rachel, what's the diplomatic situation? Ambassador Grant reports that the moderates are gaining ground. The Lumerians are pushing hard for peaceful resolution. Several species are questioning the wisdom of the hard line, especially after New Haven. But the militant bloc is still strong. Without a dramatic gesture from us, I don't think they'll back down. Hayes stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see protesters. Some carried signs demanding peace. Others called for war. His people were as divided as the galaxy itself. My grandfather told me a story once, Hayes said quietly. During the Cold War, there was a Soviet officer in a submarine who detected what he thought was an American nuclear attack. His orders were to retaliate immediately. But he didn't trust the sensors. He broke protocol and waited. Turned out it was a false alarm. If he had followed orders, World War III would have started. Billions would have died. He turned back to face the room. That officer chose trust over fear. He chose to believe his enemies weren't as bad as everyone said, and he was right. Maybe it's time we made the same choice. Kyle shook his head. Mr. President, with respect, this is different. These aren't false sensor readings. There are real ships moving toward our space with real weapons. I know, but the principle is the same. We can choose fear and guarantee bloodshed, or we can choose trust and hope for something better. Hayes sat back down. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to accept Captain Morrison's recommendation. Full stand down. The room erupted in protests. Hayes let them argue for a moment, then continued. But we're not doing it quietly. We're broadcasting it across every channel in the galaxy. We're making it impossible for the Council to ignore or misinterpret. And we're challenging them to prove they're better than the architects were. He looked at Kyle. Admiral, I need you to execute this order even though you disagree with it. Can you do that? Kyle looked like he had swallowed something bitter. Yes, sir. But I want it on record that I believe this is a mistake. Noted. Rachel, coordinate with Ambassador Grant. I want her to present this to the Council personally. Make sure every species understands what we're doing and why. Within hours, the orders went out. Human military forces across 12 star systems began powering down weapons. Ships returned to port. Orbital defense platforms went into standby mode. Marines on colony worlds stood down from combat readiness. It was the largest act of unilateral disarmament in human history, and it happened in less than a day. President Hayes himself made the announcement to the galaxy. His speech was broadcast simultaneously to every inhabited world, every ship, every station. People of the galaxy, I speak to you today not as the leader of Earth, but as a representative of humanity. We have heard the prophecy of the architects. We have seen their warnings about our species, and we understand why you fear us. He paused, letting that sink in. But we also understand something else. Fear creates the very outcomes it seeks to prevent. The architects learned this too late. They tried to control through fear, and it destroyed them. We refuse to let history repeat itself. Therefore, effective immediately, humanity is standing down completely. Every weapon is powered down. Every defense is lowered. We are opening our worlds to Council inspection teams. We are making ourselves completely vulnerable to the galaxy we have asked to accept us. This is not surrender. This is trust. We are trusting that the galaxy is wiser than the architects were. We are trusting that you will see this gesture for what it is, an act of faith in the possibility of peace. We are trusting that you will judge us by our actions today, not by ancient fears. The choice now is yours. You can prove the prophecy right by attacking a defenseless species, or you can prove it wrong by choosing cooperation over conquest. Humanity has made its choice. We choose trust. We choose peace. We choose to believe in the galaxy's capacity for wisdom. We await your response. The speech ended, and across the galaxy silence fell. Nobody had expected this. The Council delegates on Concordia Prime were stunned. The military commanders leading the fleet were confused. The billions of citizens across hundreds of worlds were shocked. Lisa Grant stood before the Council once more. Every seat was filled. Every delegate was present. Even species that rarely participated in Council affairs had sent representatives. This was history being made, and no one wanted to miss it. Ambassador Vrel spoke first. His voice carried across the chamber with unusual strength. Humanity has done something unprecedented. They have made themselves vulnerable to their enemies. Trusting in our wisdom and compassion, how we respond will define this era. It will define us. The Draxan representative clicked angrily. It's a trick. They're trying to make us look bad, making us choose between looking weak or looking cruel. No, Lisa said firmly. We're making you choose between the path of the architects or the path of wisdom, between fear or trust, between the past or the future. She pulled up a holographic display showing the energy readings from the architect weapons. These weapons are still active. If the Council fleet attacks human space now while we're defenseless, the threshold will be crossed. The weapons will activate. Billions will die across Council worlds, not because of anything humanity does, but because of the choice you make today. Theron stood, his Quillari features grave. This is indeed an unprecedented situation. Humanity has called our bluff. They have shown courage we did not expect. The question is whether we have the wisdom to match it. The debate that followed was different from previous sessions. The anger was gone, replaced by something more thoughtful. Species that had been ready for war now found themselves questioning their assumptions. If humans were truly the monsters the prophecy described, would they have made themselves so vulnerable? Would they have trusted so completely? The Lumerians proposed a new resolution. Instead of quarantine and dismantlement, they suggested full integration. Humanity would join the Council as equal members. Joint research teams would study the architect technology together. Cultural exchange programs would be established. Military cooperation would be voluntary, not mandatory. It was everything humanity had asked for in the first place. But it had taken humanity's act of trust to make it possible. The vote was called. This time the chamber was quiet as delegates registered their decisions. Lisa watched the numbers change on the display, hardly daring to breathe. When the final tally appeared, she almost cried. 42 in favor, 5 against. The resolution passed with overwhelming support. Theron announced the result. The Council accepts humanity's gesture of trust with humility and gratitude. We recognize that we were in danger of repeating the architect's mistake. Humanity has taught us a valuable lesson. Effective immediately, the blockade is lifted. The fleet will stand down. Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Council. The chamber erupted in what might have been applause, though it sounded different across 47 different species. On Earth, the reaction was pure joy. Cities erupted in celebration. People who had been preparing for war were suddenly preparing for peace. The gamble had paid off in ways no one could have predicted. Admiral Kyle Stevens stood in the war room, watching the Council fleet change course on his displays. The ships that had been converging on human space were now dispersing, returning to their home systems. He shook his head in disbelief. "I was wrong," he said quietly to Betty Hall. "I didn't think it would work. I thought they'd take advantage of our weakness." "Maybe that's the real lesson," Betty replied. "Sometimes strength isn't about weapons. Sometimes it's about being brave enough to be vulnerable." On the horizon's edge, Jake Morrison received a message from the caretaker. It was brief but profound. "Well done, young captain. The threshold was not crossed. The weapons are deactivating. The test is complete. Humanity has proven worthy. Not through violence, but through trust." 5 years had passed since the crisis that nearly destroyed the galaxy. The changes during that time had been remarkable, transforming not just humanity but every species that called the cosmos home. Lisa Grant stood in her new office on Concordia Prime, now serving as humanity's permanent representative to the Galactic Council. The view from her window showed something that would have been impossible just years ago. Human ships docked alongside alien vessels, crews mixing freely as they prepared for joint missions into unexplored space. Her assistant, a young Lumarian named Tev, entered with the day's schedule. Working with aliens had become so normal that Lisa sometimes forgot how strange it would have seemed to her younger self. "Ambassador, you have the dedication ceremony in an hour," Tev reminded her in his musical voice. "The memorial for New Haven, then the presentation of the new exploration charter this afternoon." Lisa nodded. New Haven, the wound that had nearly torn the galaxy apart. Today they would honor those who died there, and formally establish the new protocols that would ensure such a tragedy never happened again. The memorial service was held in the largest chamber on Concordia Prime. Representatives from every council species attended. A Draxan delegate, one of the same species that had attacked the colony, stood at the podium. "We cannot undo what was done," the Draxan said, its mandibles moving slowly. 2,000 humans died because of our fear. We acted as the architects did, letting terror override wisdom. We are ashamed, but we are also grateful. Humanity taught us that victims can choose forgiveness, that the attacked can choose peace. It is a lesson we will never forget. The Draxan placed a crystal marker into the memorial wall, joining hundreds of others. Each crystal represented someone who died at New Haven. Their names would shine here forever, a reminder of the cost of fear. President Hayes, now in his second term, had traveled from Earth for the ceremony. He spoke briefly, his words carefully chosen. "We remember those who died.
We honor their sacrifice.
But we also celebrate what came from their tragedy. A galaxy united, species learning to trust. The end of ancient cycles of fear. They would want us to remember, but also to move forward." After the ceremony, Lisa met with Jake Morrison. He had been promoted to admiral, now commanding the Joint Exploration Fleet. His hair had more gray in it, and his face showed the weight of leadership, but his eyes still held that spark of curiosity. "Ready for the next chapter?" Lisa asked. Jake smiled, always. "We've mapped more of the galaxy in 5 years than the Council did in the previous century. Turns out when you combine human speed with Quillari patience and Lumerian wisdom, you can accomplish anything." They walked together through the station, heading to the presentation of the new exploration charter. Along the way, they passed mixed crews, humans and aliens working side by side. A human engineer helped a Corthan technician repair a power coupling. A Lumerian scientist discussed theories with a group of human students. A Draxan security officer shared a meal with human Marines. It was normal now, just life in the new galaxy. The presentation hall was packed. The new exploration charter would formally establish the protocols for deep space missions. Every ship would carry mixed crews. Every discovery would be shared freely. Every new world would be approached with respect, not conquest. Ambassador Vrel gave the opening speech. The old Lumerian had become one of humanity's closest allies, his philosophy about trust vindicated by events. 5 years ago, we stood at the edge of disaster. The architect's prophecy seemed destined to fulfill itself through our own fear. But humanity showed us another way. Not through weapons or threats, but through vulnerability and trust. They gambled everything on the hope that we could be better than our fears. He paused, his light pulsing gently. Today we formalize the lessons learned. We commit ourselves to exploration through cooperation, to growth through partnership, to strength through diversity. The architects tried to control the galaxy. We will embrace its chaos. Jake was called up to present the first mission under the new charter. The Horizon's Edge, now upgraded and expanded, would lead a fleet of 30 ships from 15 different species into the unmapped regions beyond Council space. "Our mission is simple," Jake said. "Explore, learn, discover, but also to carry the message that the galaxy has learned, that different species can work together, that trust is stronger than fear, that the future belongs to those brave enough to build it together." Amy Brooks stood beside him. She had been appointed as the fleet's chief science officer. Paul Chen would be coming too, along with crews representing the best of what the galaxy had to offer. "We launch in 2 weeks," Jake continued, "and we do it not as humans or Lumerians or Quillari, but as explorers. As the next generation learning from the mistakes of the past. The architects left us their warning. We're going to leave our own legacy, one of hope instead of fear." The presentation ended to enthusiastic support. As delegates filed out, Lisa found herself approached by Theron. The Quillari leader had become more open over the years, less rigid in his thinking. "Ambassador Grant, I wanted to thank you personally. Your species changed us all, made us question assumptions we had held for centuries. It was uncomfortable but necessary." "You're welcome," Lisa said, "but the credit goes both ways. You chose to listen when you could have chosen violence. That took courage too." After Theron left, Lisa returned to her office. On her desk was a sealed package marked with architect symbols. It had arrived that morning from the research team studying the ancient installations. She opened it carefully. Inside was a data crystal and a note from Dr. Paul Chen. "Ambassador, we've completed our analysis of the final architect archives. You need to see this. It changes everything we thought we knew about the prophecy." Lisa inserted the crystal into her computer. The holographic display activated, showing text in the architect language with translation running alongside. What she read made her sit down hard. The prophecy hadn't been about humans specifically. The architects had created dozens of prophecies, each one describing a different potential species that might arise in the galaxy. Humans were just one possibility among many. The prophecies described species with different traits, different strengths, different challenges, but every prophecy ended the same way. With a choice, with a test of whether the galaxy would respond with fear or wisdom. The architects hadn't been predicting the future. They had been preparing the galaxy for every possible future, creating scenarios that would force younger civilizations to confront their own capacity for growth or destruction. Humans happened to be the species that triggered the test, but it could have been anyone. The lesson was universal. Fear creates the futures it fears most. Trust creates the possibility of something better. Lisa sat back processing this information. It meant the crisis had never really been about humanity at all. It had been about the galaxy's ability to evolve beyond the architect's mistakes. Humans were just the catalyst, the chaos that forced everyone to choose. She thought about sharing this information immediately, then reconsidered. Maybe it was better that people believed the prophecy was specific to humans. It had motivated humanity to be better, to prove themselves worthy of trust. And it had motivated the galaxy to move beyond fear-based decision-making. Sometimes myths were more powerful than truth. Her computer chimed. A message from Earth. President Hayes was calling. Lisa, I wanted you to be the first to know. The Council has approved humanity's proposal for the Academy. Lisa's heart leaped. The Academy had been humanity's dream for 3 years. A school on Concordia Prime where young people from all species could study together, learn from each other, grow beyond the prejudices of their parents. That's wonderful news. Mr. President, there's more. They want you to serve as its first director. They said if anyone could teach the next generation how to build trust, it's the woman who convinced the galaxy to choose peace over war. Lisa felt tears forming. I'd be honored. I thought you might say that. You'll need to resign as ambassador, of course, but I think this is more important anyway. Training the next generation, making sure the lessons we learned aren't forgotten. After the call ended, Lisa stood at her window again, watching the mixed crews preparing ships for their missions. She thought about all the children who would come to the Academy. Human, Lumerian, Quillari, Draxan, and dozens of other species. Learning together. Playing together. Growing up in a galaxy where cooperation was normal, not exceptional. The architects had feared chaos. They had tried to control it, predict it, prevent it. But chaos wasn't something to fear. It was the engine of change, the force that broke old patterns and created new possibilities. Humans were chaos. But so were the Lumerians in their own way. So were the Draxans. Every species brought their own form of unpredictability to the galaxy. The trick wasn't controlling it. It was embracing it. 2 weeks later, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge as the exploration fleet prepared to launch. His crew was a perfect mix of species, each bringing their unique strengths to the mission. Amy was at her science station, already excited about the discoveries ahead. Paul was reviewing linguistic databases, preparing to translate whatever they might find. Kevin Murphy, now his second-in-command, was coordinating with the other ships in the fleet.